Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome aboard the historic Klamath Ferry, headquarters of the Bay Area Council. You are one of the very first major events that we've had on this boat. We relocated it in September last year. The boat has a really fascinating history. It was actually built in the Bay, used to serve ferry trips from the waterfront here up to Sacramento until the bridges were built. And then it was converted to office space where it served as the headquarters for many companies, Landor, Duraflame, kind of random, I know, but it's true. And it was anchored in Stockton until about 2 years ago when the Bay Area Council picked it up and turned it into our headquarters. At the time, commercial real estate was very much in demand in San Francisco. Things have changed a little bit, but we know it's short term. So now a little bit about the Bay Area Council. The Bay Area Council's the largest business association in the Bay Area, and we work on a lot of areas: homelessness, housing policy, climate policy, water policy, education, workforce development. And when I first interviewed to join the Bay Area Council a decade ago, they sat me down and they asked me, they said, which area of our policies are you most interested in working on? And I gave them the answer. And then they asked, what areas are you least interested in working on? And I didn't flinch. I said, water and climate. And they said, why? Why? You came right out of the gate. And I said, because I don't know much about those things, those topics at the time. I didn't really know much. I said, all I know is that water policy is one of the most contentious issues in California. It has been since the state's founding, and that the dividing lines on it are regional as well as partisan, maybe even more regional than partisan. And they said, well, you understand it pretty well. You've got the job. You're on water and climate. And I am so glad that they ignored me and put me on the water beat because it is, without question, the most fun work that we do here. And oftentimes, very frustrating. Progress can be slow, but when you get a breakthrough, it really feels great. And you really feel like you got something, a major win for future generations. So, and as anyone who's lived in California over the past decade and has seen 2 record droughts, each of the past droughts we have were millennium level severity droughts. And the floods that ended the previous drought and nearly toppled the emergency spillway at Oroville Dam, and the wildfires that happened after. Seemingly every record that was there to be broken related to climate, broken again and again until, and right up until today. Today, we have officially broken the snowpack record in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Give it a round. And so for the opportunity to work on those issues through this initiative, the California Resilience Challenge, I owe a lot of people some thanks because this is the funnest thing that I get to do here. So first off, let's get a big round of applause for JP Morgan Chase and for Southern California Edison, Valley Water, and PG&E. These are our steering committee members. Thank you. And additional support, financial support, came from Wareham Development, the Resources Legacy Fund. See Matt here, thank you. Bank of America, and CSAA Insurance. So thank you all. These initiatives are only possible with your help. But it's not just money to make a program like this work. You really need expertise. You need expertise in the fields of engineering. You need expertise in the fields of community needs. You need a lot of expertise on project delivery and history of under-resourced communities across California. So to help us deliver this program, we have an advisory committee, and our advisory committee helps us review all of the proposals that we get across the state. In the 3 years we've done this, we've had nearly 200 proposals from every corner of California. And our advisory committee goes through these proposals and helps make sure the best recommendations go straight to the top for consideration on what winning projects are. So I want to thank our 2022 advisory committee. Hold your applause until after. Some of them are here. We've got Claire Bonham Carter from AECOM, Jonathan Parfrey from Climate Resolve, Ann Hayden at the Environmental Defense Fund, Debbie Gorman from the Greenlining Institute, Reverend Jethro Moore from the San Jose Silicon Valley NAACP, Michelle Pissarro from the Nature Conservancy, Abby Edwards, Kristen Payne, and Taylor Carnevale from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. Been an honor to work with that team hand in glove on this initiative. Stephanie Ankajaya from Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman, and Gloria Walton from the Pollution Solutions Project. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. And then there's one other person who wants to give some thanks to and recognize this initiative, and it's the man standing virtually behind me. He wanted to be here tonight, but could not. So we do have a virtual message from Secretary of Natural Resources, Wade Crowfoot. Lip syncing. Anyone do that? Hold.
Thank you for the opportunity to beam in and share thoughts. I so wish I was with you in San Francisco along the Bay tonight. It is my great pleasure on behalf of Governor Newsom to thank the Bay Area Council Foundation and congratulate the winners of the most recent round of the California Resilience Challenge. As the fourth largest economy in the world, California is leading the way, showing the world how we transition to a carbon neutral future. At the same time, we're focused on protecting people and natural places from the impacts of climate change, building our resilience to these climate threats. Now, Mother Nature has continued to surprise, and we know that these climate threats are accelerating. In October, we ended the 3 driest years on record in California, and in January, we experienced one of the wettest 3-week periods in our history, not to mention all of this snow and rain that we continue to get. In September, the American West experienced the longest and hottest heat wave in national history. And of course, we continue to be challenged by sea level rise and coastal erosion and all that brings. So for all of these reasons, partnerships are essential. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of what the Bay Area Council Foundation has done. Since 2020, over $5 million spread out to 32 organizations, groups, community leaders that are leading the way, building their community's resilience to climate change. Now, this effort is only possible thanks to the generous funding of J.P. Morgan Chase, Valley Water, PG&E, and Edison. So I want to thank you for stepping up and providing this funding that is allowing for all of these innovative projects to be funded. And again, tonight, you're celebrating the most recent recipients of the 2022 round of Climate Resilience Challenge funding. And as I looked through this list in preparation for sharing thoughts, I was struck at just the breadth, the diversity of these groups. So I want to and as a representative of Governor Newsom, thank and congratulate the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, the City of San Leandro, Greenbelt Alliance, the Student Conservation Association, the Alliance for a Better Community, the Mycelium Youth Network, and California Interfaith Power and Light. I often say that the solutions to our climate challenges are not found in Sacramento or in Washington, D.C. They're built from the ground up in our communities, through leaders, through groups like this. So from my view, this is one more way California is leading the world, demonstrating that these unique partnerships between our corporate partners, our community groups, our state government can succeed in protecting people and places from the impacts of climate change and building our resilience for all to come. I am so optimistic for the Bay Area, for California, and what is to come. Climate change is a daunting and unprecedented challenge, but California is up for combating it and adjusting to it. And we will continue to show the world through efforts like yours just how this gets done. So once again, thank you for all that you're doing, and congratulations to this year's recipients of the California Resilience Challenge.
Thank you, Wade. Next, I'm going to introduce our very first panel. We've got 3 panels today. And so the first panel, we're going to be talking about the private sector's role in advancing these resilience initiatives across the state. So let me welcome up to the front, Tony Tolentino from JP Morgan Chase, Chris Benjamin, the Director of Corporate Sustainability from PG&E, Tara Kaushik from Southern California Edison, and we have one more, Ellen Bhavani, and I'm sorry because we had Rick Callender who called in sick at the last minute, and I forgot to get your name on the updated agenda, so my fault. And Ellen Hannock, who's going to be moderating the panel. So Ellen, thank you.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm the same height as them if I stand. So I'm just gonna do that. It's really a treat to be here with this esteemed panel and with all of you. And I was excited to learn about this effort, and I'm excited to have a chance to ask all of you a little bit about it, because this is a pretty innovative program. There are not many programs like this in the country where private industry, utilities are teaming up to fund adaptation that's, kind of at a pretty broad scale. So, I know that all of you in your sectors have to think about climate change and the impacts on you and everything. And so adaptation, I'm sure, is a top of mind kind of thing and growing in that way. But just love to kind of ask each of you a little bit about what brought your organization to this opportunity and to this effort. Maybe we'll start right here with Bhavani. Oh, but yeah, I'll let you guys share. Thanks.
Hello. All right. Hi, I'm Bhavani Yerpothu. I am the interim chief operating officer for overseeing the watershed section of Valley Water. Quickly, Valley Water is the water wholesaler for the Santa Clara County, pretty much the Silicon Valley area, but we also have the flood protection and environmental stewardship mission for the Santa Clara County as well. So it's pretty natural, I think, for us to be thinking about aligning ourselves to this effort. As Secretary Crawford mentioned, our board has long believed that this is got to be a grassroots effort that needs to come up. So we are proud to be part of this effort, and we've been supporting this since 2020 as well. So we have several projects, including the shoreline protection project that we are working with the Army Corps of Engineers in the Alviso area that we are working on adapting, building shoreline protection, as well as other flood protection projects that are now taking into account climate change impacts and the whiplash of the changing climate that we're all feeling.
Chris, we'll go right to you.
Thanks so much, and great to be with all of you. First time on the boat here, so really enjoying that as well. So I lead the sustainability team at PG&E, who we serve gas and electricity to about 16 million people in Northern Central California, and have had a long-standing focus on addressing climate change. I think privileged to operate here in California, as Secretary Crowfoot was mentioning, just a state with such a long history and commitment. And so we, I think, like many of you, have just a sharp focus on decarbonizing our energy system. Last year, we announced a set of longer-term climate goals, including achieving a net zero energy system by 2040, about 5 years ahead of California's carbon neutrality goal. So a lot of work underway to deliver cleaner energy and help accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles, energy efficiency, all the things that I know are probably near and dear to the hearts of all of you. At the same time, we're all experiencing the effects of climate change, and so we know we need to adapt our systems. And so we've got a strong focus on that as well. On the one hand, really working to understand the impacts of climate change. I think we're fortunate to operate here in California with some of the best climate science and data available about what we can expect. And so really integrating that into our planning and our design standards, while at the same time taking action today, but also doing everything we can to support communities in building resilience, because this is it's a team effort. And I think this has just been a wonderful program. We've been proud to support it, really, I think, since the early days. And just looking forward to learning more about the projects and really that ripple effect that each of these projects can have, because we're all learning together about how do you build resilience to the climate threats that we face.
Great. And I'm going to jump over to Tara next, because you're also on the utility side. Then we'll wrap up.
I'm not offended. Don't worry.
Then we're going to wrap up with the big bucks, with the money.
Oh, now it's working. Thank you. Happy to follow my utility partner over here and the great folks on the panel, and thanks for having us here today. Certainly proud to support the Resilience Challenge. We really have, since the get-go, believed that there needs to be a way for communities and the power grid to sustain themselves by working together. And part of what this initiative does is absolutely that, identifying impacts to various communities, analyzing, and forecasting what those impacts would be. And then, of course, finding a creative solution as much as possible to, whether they're resiliency hubs consistent with the award funding that we're supporting today, amongst other resiliency related studies, which are really important. They're, as Wade Crowfoot said, I mean, it's critical, right, to our future. So that is very natural. I think PG&E also said it's natural for infrastructure related companies like Edison to support. Plus, of course, we very much take the lead on the electrification initiative for the state. We have laid out in white papers and such pathways towards a clean energy future. But in addition to that, we also have a climate adaptation vulnerability assessment that we have put forward really to analyze a lot of these issues with respect to the electrical system within our territory, but also looking at impacts that could be felt statewide. So very much appreciate the initiative here and being able to support it. I will just say that some of what the analysis has come out with is by 2050 we could look at transmission corridors actually going out if we don't find a solution before then, right? Or substations and floodplains that could actually be flooded, be underwater. So these are things we're looking at very closely and trying to take action now in that respect. And we do know that making these sustainability efforts really work. Our wildfire grid hardening efforts, as an example, have really reduced since 2018, the wildfire impacts to our system and our customers by about 75 to 80%. So certainly, proud of that effort and looking forward to constructive solutions in the future and supporting these endeavors as much as we can for our communities in the state.
Thanks so much, Tara. So now, Tony, why would the banking sector do this?
I know it's weird following utility, working for a bank. So my name is Tony Tolentino. I work obviously for JP Morgan Chase. I have the privilege of overseeing the global philanthropy portfolio and strategy for Northern California and the San Francisco Bay Area. So obviously this project fell under me, and I was lucky enough to inherit it actually when I joined the firm in May. So May of 2022, so it hasn't even been a year yet. But broadly speaking, JP Morgan Chase, we very much believe in supporting sustainability and resilience efforts nationally and globally, and we're working with our clients and looking at our own operations in terms of how we achieve those goals. From a philanthropic perspective, we very much believe in public-private partnerships, as well as using our own philanthropic capital to help de-risk innovations or de-risk ideas. So there was a lot of alignment in terms of what the California Resilience Challenge was hoping to accomplish in 2020 when we first signed up for this effort. So it's been an amazing opportunity really for us, since our bank is one of the largest here in California. We touch many communities throughout the state through our various business lines. And obviously we hear directly from our clients and our customers, very often, communities of color and other vulnerable communities who are seeing the firsthand effects of climate change and other climate related efforts, or I should say climate related effects. We're hearing it directly from them. So making an investment in the California Resilience Challenge so that we can have a view across the entire state in terms of seeing innovative projects and innovative proposals to address some of these climate issues aligned well with our own efforts here in California.
Thanks so much. And that actually tees really up nicely with the next theme I wanted to hit on, which is, it's kind of, the Bay Area Council is mighty and powerful, but it is the Bay Area that it focuses on. And so already, one of you here is, down in SoCal, right? And, Tony, your organization does have, as you say, a statewide presence, but your office is here. PG&E has what, about not quite half the state, I don't know, a good chunk, but Valley Water is much more sort of grounded. You're here in the Bay Area, but sort of the thinking behind, what's unusual about this in part, this effort, and I think really great, is that it is just, it's y'all come statewide, take a look at climate resilience. So just, a little bit, if you have thoughts on why that makes sense from your perspective and what excites you about that.
Great question. Yeah, you are right. Our mission is Valley Water, which is Santa Clara County focused. But what makes this effort really great is these projects and some of these infrastructure efforts, and especially in California around the sensitive environment, protected species, habitats that we have to work around, take a very long time and do take a regional approach, which is why it makes sense for us to take take an effort to partner with others and be part of an organization that is taking a broader picture, because those partnerships are made at a higher level and a regional level, state level, than they are at a local level. So it completely makes sense for us to kind of learn from that regional perspective and create those partnerships regionally.
Very similar. I think, each of us individually can do only so much. So I think, when you pool your resources, you can just have a bigger impact. And I think, climate change has no boundaries, so it affects all of us. It affects our whole state. If you just look at the storms that we've all endured going back to the holidays, they've, impacted the entire state, the entire kind of Western region. And I think, one of the things that's I think interesting and exciting about California is just how diverse the state is in terms of its climate zones and sort of all the different microclimates. And so it gives you the opportunity to try different projects that not only will be useful for others that live in that region, but even other parts of the world that have similar kinds of climates as California. So because it's such a big state, you can really have a diverse set of adaptation projects and really learn a lot.
Plus. Actually, I was trying to think of something else I could say. But so two things. One, I think this program being statewide and really being grassroots really gives us the opportunity to elevate and see, what are these climate solutions or projects that are being elevated at a grassroots level, which makes it pretty exciting and unique. And I think to touch on your point too, I always make the argument to my colleagues in other states and other places overseas that California, because of our extremes, when it comes, whether it be weather or geography or or other challenges, very often because of those extremes, the solutions that are generated here can be applied to other places across the country and overseas. So I think that's what makes it so exciting, being a statewide effort and touching so many different places here in California.
Plus on my end too. Yeah, I think everybody talking about working together is a must, only because, we're in this together, but we're also not operating in a vacuum. I'm actually in charge of regulatory relations at my company, and that means that we deal a lot with the regulator of the utilities, and that is the California Public Utilities Commission. That is a state agency. We're dealing with this statewide, and there's a recognition that we're dealing with it statewide. So necessarily the policy that we're going to carry forward towards a sustainable future has to be statewide. And that's something that we take very seriously and are proud to undertake. I will also sort of echo and point out, in addition to what my fellow panelists said, that what you do in one location perhaps could be a lesson learned for another location. So that's part of what we're looking at with our climate adaptation study. Like, can this apply to other areas of the state? I know PG&E will be doing theirs next, actually, right after ours. So it will replicate a set of tools. I hope it will develop a set of tools for us to address a lot of these climate-related issues statewide.
Well, thank you. So I want one more question for you all, as kind of really teeing up a little bit the panels that are going to follow us, where we're going to get to hear about how some of the projects have been doing and get to hear about some of the new ones about to unfold. So, your organizations have all been involved from the get-go, and you mentioned sort of the opportunities for learning, the opportunities for partnerships, and just kind of wondering if each of you have any reflections or thoughts on sort of what you're seeing in terms. Are you seeing any trends? Are you, there's some particular things that are exciting you, and just a little bit of thoughts about what the program has been able to do so far with $5 million and 32 awardees, which is pretty impressive.
Thank you. I think it's really exciting to see some of the projects, and I had a chance to talk to a few of our winners today and scanning through the previous projects and results. I'm seeing what I see as sort of an incubator that we've funded through this effort that is taking to projects that could be scalable and take it up above. So the land management example that I heard today, and then the conversion of a church, right, of interfaith community, and to connect it on an emotional level to people, I thought was a brilliant effort to just take away the debate over climate change or not, but just get to action. So I think there is a lot of strategy, policy, and actual implementation, just get it done, that we're seeing that I think can translate very well.
Yeah, one of the things that I think has been a real sharp focus for this effort, really since the beginning, is a focus on how can we better serve underrepresented communities. And I know the advisory panel, really considered that as they were helping to review the various applicants. And to me, that's really important. I think, as you were saying, climate change can impact disadvantaged, vulnerable communities more and have that disproportionate impact. So it's so important that we have a real focus on that. I think that's been consistent throughout all the years, as well as, we've talked about the collaboration between organizations, funding, and trying to help select the projects. But each of the projects is really its own sort of partnership and collaboration at the local level, bringing different groups together, communities, Native American tribal governments and communities. And I think that's been really exciting, is to see the kind of the local and regional collaboration that's taking place to try to address these issues.
I think one thing that's most exciting for us is the fact that because this is sort of like a portfolio approach in terms of how these products are being funded, the fact that products are able to learn from one another. And actually, I'm looking at Adrian here. I don't know if the original intention was to do like 3 separate years, but the fact that it has been done for 3 separate years, to look back and to actually build off of previous years and previous projects. I think there was one this year that sort of used the learnings of a previous award. It's like, that's exciting for us, that it builds off of one another. And then hopefully, also going out to more funding either from the state or other large philanthropies to help really get these projects going. I think that's really exciting on our part.
Definitely echo what folks said here, but I will say it was exciting to me to see the youth get involved here, right? Like students, young blood, way to go. Also speaks to succession planning. I mean, we can't do this in one generation's lifetime. I think it's going to continue to evolve as our weather-related events continue to evolve. I will say that in terms of looking at things proactively, I mean, that shift, at least what I see to be a trend, is very positive. We don't want to just be reactive in trying to save communities, especially vulnerable members of our communities, when these things happen. We've got to find a way to have a process and to plan ahead. In terms of an opportunity for improvement, I'll just quickly say that I hope to see more cities and counties and other entities take the lead in identifying impacts in their communities, doing their own assessments, and sort of, especially if they're under-resourced, finding the tools to be able to get those efforts underway to help their communities. We see some of that here. But I just want to note that about only a quarter of the cities in our Edison service territory have really taken the initiative here to look at that. So we're really hoping to see a lot more. Always happy, of course, that we have this initiative underway, and I look forward to future, expansions, I hope, of seeing cities do this.
So I know I can say I hope this is not the last year. So I would just want to end with thanks to Tara and Tony and Chris and Bhavani and your organizations for your leadership. Thanks to Bay Area Council and congratulations to all of the awardees, and Mike is being passed on to hear about those.
Great. Thanks again so much for our funders on that panel to peek into some of the motivating factors that are inspiring them to support these efforts. So let me introduce our next panel. So we started this initiative in 2020. And since then, it's been mentioned a few times, we've raised and awarded over $5 million to 32 communities. It began in 2020 with our first round of grantees. And those projects are now done. So we now have a first kind of glimpse at the kind of work that these projects are going to be producing and the value that they're going to be creating. So we've got a few of the projects representatives from those grantees here today. So for the next panel, let me welcome Jackie McLeod from the city of Watsonville, Tim Bailey from the Watershed Research and Training Center, Reed Bogert from the City and County Association of Governments from San Mateo County, and Chris Elias from San Joaquin County Flood Agency, and Warner Chabot from the San Francisco Estuary Institute, and our moderator, Daniel Kagan from CSAA Insurance.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. Again, my name is Danielle Kagan. I'm with CSA Insurance Group. We offer AAA branded insurance in 23 states, including here in Northern California. And we have seen firsthand the impacts of climate change, whether it's wildfires, whether it's repeated atmospheric rivers creating a lot of damage to homes. And that has been the impetus for us to start our own climate journey. So we have committed to reducing our carbon emissions by 50% by 2025 and going carbon neutral. And we're really excited about embarking on that journey. It has also led us to support the California Resilience Challenge. So I'm honored to be here with some of our inaugural award recipients and want to kick off the panel today by inviting each of you to share briefly, do a self-introduction and tell us a little bit about your project. And I know we're doing some slides, so I think we need to go in a certain order here. So I am going to ask, I believe, Jackie to go first.
My name is Jackie McLeod. I'm the Environmental Sustainability Manager with the City of Watsonville. In the past, I wouldn't have to say where City of Watsonville is, but those atmospheric rivers can probably point you in the direction. Watsonville is a small community underserved in southern Santa Cruz County. We border the Pajaro River. Town of Pajaro is just across the bridge from us. Our project in particular wanted to focus on heat island effects, localized flooding, water quality issues, as well as demonstrating to the community, hey, if the city can do this, we think you can do this to your home or around your community as well. The project in particular built on multiple planning efforts. I live in public works. I don't like a book sitting on the shelf without a plan to make it happen. So we had just finished our local hazard mitigation plan through the Cal OES grant. We looked at our mitigation strategies and really realized what our community needed was safeguarding against flooding. It was just, we've had catastrophic flooding in the past. We just recently had catastrophic flooding. And so what our project wanted to do was look at green infrastructure for the future as a way to build climate resiliency, localized flooding reductions, reduced heat island effects, and incorporate some of our general plan elements, urban forestry management plan, and our climate adaptation plan. We're a small but mighty force. Within our project scope, we ended up hiring a sub-consultant engineering firm to help us develop the green infrastructure plan. We really went to the community though, because in public works too, as a municipal employee, I know what I have to do for regulation, for the community. I need to know what the community thinks they need, though, to inform my project. So that community engagement piece was really critical, and it was bilingual. My community is predominantly Latino or Latinas. So they don't necessarily speak just Castilian Spanish. So I actually had to go out in different dialects with some of those community members as well. We went through the process of figuring out which of our 8 projects we could actually implement moving forward in the future. The biggest project we were able to focus on was our nature center. It's a hub in the community. It's a free recreational resource. It also is a place where we can bring our nonprofit partners like Watsonville Wetlands Watch that focuses on water quality issues. Our resource conservation district can come there and do land practices. Food security in our community is a huge issue, so we actually give away fruit trees as well to the community. The Nature Center is one of our highest priority projects, and I know I'm on the countdown here, so I'll wrap this up. We actually just moved this project forward with the California Natural Resource Agency for $827,000. We're in the 3rd round of the grant application to actually implement this project. So we went through this planning effort, and we're actually looking to secure money to build the project now. So thank you to the Bay Area Council Foundation. Thank you to all the investments. A community like ours needs that kind of partnership to move forward, because my community members make on average about $17,000 a year. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Tim?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Bailey. No. Okay. My name is Tim Bailey, and I work for the Watershed Research and Training Center. And I work basically in collaboration with the Million Acre Forest Resilience Strategy, where the state and federal government have an agreement to pursue dramatically increased climate adaptation work for California forest. However, there are quite a lot of resources flowing into this program. However, the California Resilience Challenge provided strategic investments early on for us to implement the California Forest Ladder Analytics Collaborative, where we went to all of the basically we provided support for partners who are implementing these projects. The Forest Service and CAL FIRE are often essentially funding large-scale implementation projects, but they're actually exhausting the pipeline of planning projects in front of them. And so we worked with resource conservation districts, tribal governments, local governments, other NGOs to help them to use data-driven decision support mechanisms in planning fire resilience projects. And this this project was really informed by a negative Legislative Analyst's Office report on prior efforts to implement statewide LiDAR in the state, where the Legislative Analyst's Office actually had a very strong critique in saying that there wasn't a plan for user-driven design in building the data processes that will inform our forest resilience work. And taking that to heart, what our partners kind of all recognize is that we need to be engaging the people who are doing implementation, the communities that are kind of subject to this work. And subsequently, we've trained 18 people who are already working in forest climate adaptation work across primarily the North State, but we had people as far south as Inland Empire and the Southern Sierras as well, in using fair data processes to produce, and that's like open data methods for producing analysis that will identify drought susceptibility and resilience in forests. And subsequently, this has been used in this most recent solicitation for the Forest Health Program. We participated in over $26 million in applications to the Forest Health Round. And in Northern California, since January, there has been $106 million in new federal funding that has been directed through the infrastructure bill that is within the landscape that we've been working.
And in one case, for the community welfare defense grants, Northern California got almost a third of the federal money that was allocated in the CWDG program. And I think that that speaks to delivering planning capacity before we have these emergency allocations where agencies feel that they have to move money out to accomplish political goals. We need to get the planning in front of that. And that is something that the resilience challenge is been particularly spot on with, is like identifying the need to have positive planning at the outset. And thank you.
Great, thank you. Tim Reed?
All right, thank you. I have to ask Adrian, is this boat also your office space? Wow, that's pretty cool. I have to say it's bold being on the water too. For anyone who has a little seasickness tendency, that could be a little bit much, right? Feeling a little bit of rocking, but it's cool though. I like it. Easy access, yeah. It is very cool. Great view. My name is Reed Bogert, and I work with the City and County Association of Governments for San Mateo County. And our project is called the Resilient San Carlos Schoolyards effort. And what to say about this? It really focused on working in community with schools and advancing resiliency that aligns with work that the cities are doing to improve water quality, reduce the impacts of increased storm events, dealing with heat impacts as well, as we see the swing back and forth between high heat and large storms over time. And so the project developed the Resilient San Carlos Schoolyards concept plans and report. And the whole idea was to integrate green stormwater infrastructure for those that are kind of in the weeds on that stuff. You can think of rain gardens, rain barrels, trees, removing asphalt with pervious surfaces so that the water can kind of hit the ground and soak in. The other benefits to the schools obviously are increased outdoor learning opportunities, just safer and more comfortable schoolyards. These are things that all schools, I think, want. There's not necessarily funding or the impetus to make those transformations. So we took the opportunity through this grant to do that with one partnering school district, the San Carlos School District. We have about 23 school districts in San Mateo County, so we're starting here. But the idea, as was mentioned before, is to scale this model. So we co-created the plans with students, from everyone from students up through the teachers and principals, parents. That we had a great design team of architects to help with the technical work, but we went through a deep community engagement process to hear back from the communities and actually incorporate those ideas into the concept plans themselves. So we have 3 full concept plans with project elements ranging from small rain garden to a large underground, basically a turf replacement project at one of the schools, leveraging stormwater captured at a regional scale, storing it underground, and then feeding that into a really high efficiency field for that particular location. So it's a great model, I think, for others in the county and across the state to do similar work. It's a type of partnership that we don't see a lot in terms of the municipalities working with the school districts. They have different regulations, different kind of goals, but we saw the overlap on climate resiliency and took advantage of that, and it worked out really well. One thing I want to note for the outcome is that the schools go through their master planning process, every few years or whatnot. This district happened to be going through theirs in parallel. And so we were able to propose integrating the concept plans into the facility master plan process, which is a really big outcome and makes the projects eligible for future bond measures and that sort of thing. So I guess I'll finish there, and thanks for having me.
Great, thank you so much, Reed. Chris, you're up next.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Danielle. Chris Elias is my name, and I'm the Executive Director of the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency, fondly known as JAFCA. And we are based in Stockton area. The area that we support essentially is coterminous with the county of San Joaquin. And the county, as you may know, is bordered to the south by Stanislaus And there's a river that crisscrosses several counties from the mountains, from the Sierras all the way down, called the San Joaquin River. And we are at the bottom of the bathtub. So as the river is making its way all the way down, it has a lot of infrastructure along the way, including dams and reservoirs for water supply purposes and for a lot of other uses. So being at the bottom of the barrel, we have to deal with the consequences. And what that means essentially then is we have to, when there's too little water, then we have severe drought. When there's too much water, we have a lot of flood because everyone's releasing water from the top in order to free up their space in the reservoirs and keep, and then to accommodate inflows into their system. So a recent study by the Department of Water Resources projects that what you're seeing right there on my right shoulder is a current hydrology of what it looks like. Basically, we have about 100,000 CFS flowing into the system. On my left, then is the projection that between now and 2072, the flow in that channel, the same channel is supposed to triple. So essentially, we're looking at 300,000 CFS. And just because it's projected to occur in 2072 doesn't mean it will wait until then. You can see what's already happening. And we are already feeling the brunt of that. So then we have to speed into action. And along the way here in our basin, we have over 400,000 people. And if that kind of system were to come through and breach or overtop the levee, that means you have 400,000 people along the path that will need to be evacuated or somehow escape from the wrath of the flood. So it is projected that that type of flow is going to result in about $1.5 billion in annualized losses in infrastructure. Okay, and with over 300,000 lives lost annually. So that is something that's significant, is impactful, and we have to do something about it. So this fund that came from the Bay Area Council Foundation enabled us to do a system-wide review and evaluation of the threat that we face. Hence, the title of our project is the Lower San Joaquin River Flood Risk Reduction and Climate Resiliency Study project. And so it enabled us to take a system look at the entire river and then prioritize what we can work on as our own community and the areas we need to partner on with folks who are upstream. And we're talking about a lot of stakeholders. Just in our county alone, we have 57 reclamation districts we have to work with. These are local maintaining agencies, levee maintaining agencies we have to work with. But in the end, we all prioritize our work and came up with 4 distinct projects. So one of them is what is called the Paradise Cut project. Is basically is an expansion of a weir that would help to divert water from the main channel and provide us some kind of a relief valve. So for those of you who are familiar with the Sacramento drainage basin, it's almost like a mini Yola bypass, but for San Joaquin Basin. Nothing on that scale, but it's much smaller. But that will help us to relieve the flow in the channel and then move the water and the threat away from the population center of 400,000 people. And then start making its way then toward the state pumps. So that's first. Second then is we're also looking at putting in place some utilizing that obviously opportunity to make sure that we improve the floodplain, enhance some recharge operations, create some ecosystem opportunities, while at the same time providing improving water supply for our farmers who are along the way. So that's the multiple benefits that we're going to be getting from that one project alone. And then we have some structural work we need to do as well in improving our levee system and strengthening them to prevent and protect against things like through seepage and under seepage. And then also working with the land use agencies themselves, really innovative leaders to move homes away from the levee in order to create a path so that if we do need to increase and make those levees more robust, then we have the room to do so. So that's second. Third is then that we are also looking at again, collaborating with our reclamation district to ensure that the work that they do, that we help them in ways that would strengthen their levee system, again, to be able to withstand the threats from the rivers. Finally, we have our gate structure that we're building and to protect against sea level rise. So because the threat isn't coming only from the riverine area, that's also the threat from the river, from the sea that's coming through sea level rise. So we have a gate structure we're building, and that gate structure will protect a community of about 24,000 people. And most of them are disadvantaged community. And they can hardly raise enough money by themselves to build that kind of infrastructure. It's a $96 million project, but we have to self-tax ourselves to raise the local cost share. But so bottom line is this project has helped us immensely to, again, identify those solutions, prioritize them, and then feed them into the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan study. So today, that plan was approved last December, and now it includes contribution from San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency, incorporating all these features we just talked about. So without that funding, we wouldn't have been able to participate effectively to inform that plan. So guess what's going to happen with that plan? The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the state of California is now going to use that then to fund flood control projects in our valley. And that is the beauty of the funding that you made available to us. So I really, really want to thank the Bay Area Council Foundation for making it possible for us to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Werner.
I'm Werner Chabot. I'm the executive director of the San Francisco Estuary Institute. We are a nonprofit environmental science research institute and a nonprofit environmental consulting firm for local and regional government agencies. We try to provide science and scientific tools to deal with landscape scale, environmental and climate adaptation issues. We focus mostly in the San Francisco Bay Area and the Delta. In a way, it's bizarre because I'm here really representing three amazing women, none of whom could be here, and who really are the stars of this show. This project to deal with mapping rising groundwater around the San Francisco Bay Area was a three-way partnership that was led by Dr. Chris May, who's the CEO of the Pathways Climate Institute, Ellen Plain with the San Francisco Estuary Institute, and UC Berkeley professor Dr. Christina Hill. But Pathways Climate Institute really was the heart and soul of this effort and really the leaders of it. These three women, I think, are extraordinary Bay Area climate leaders. And I would note that every meeting that I've gone to about climate change and adaptation in the Bay Area for the last decade, I do a head count, and it's almost always 75 to 80% female led. So if we get out of this desperate mess, I think we're going to owe a debt of gratitude to our mothers, our sisters, our cousins, and our daughters, because they're the ones that are going to get us out of this. Okay. The context here is that in the San Francisco Bay Area, 9 counties, we're essentially 8 million people in a bathtub. We have many climate challenges, but really probably the most significant one is the triple whammy of sea level rise, rising groundwater, and lowland flooding from more extreme storms. If you stop and think about it, our entire infrastructure of the Bay Area, our freeways, our airports, our water treatment plants, all exist down at that very low sea level, bay level area. So that area, whether even if you're the richest person living up in the foothills, you still got to flush your toilet. And if the water treatment plant's underwater, your toilet ain't going to work. So about 4 or 5 years ago, Dr. Hill, who was an architecture professor at UC Berkeley, and her students went out and they started to look at this issue of rising groundwater, and they went out and they measured the wells around the Bay Area and core boring holes from construction sites. And they correlated that with the tides and rising and lowering tides in San Francisco Bay. And no big surprise, there's a direct correlation. And that, I think, was started to raise an alarm that maybe sea level, we've been focusing on sea level rise, when really the real challenge to the Bay Area is maybe more rising groundwater. If you stop and think about the problem, you know, the groundwater, we have a very high groundwater table in much of the Bay Area. And as the seas rise and the tides rise, that pushes that groundwater upwards. And if you stop and think about it further, you realize that groundwater levels are essential to the design of our roadways, our highways, our airport runways, our underground utilities, and any other below grade structure or building that has a basement or a mechanical service unit in its lower floors. So, and over time, that rising groundwater has the potential to not only buckle roads, damage foundations of the buildings, flood basements, and infiltrate and overwhelm our sewer system and upset our underground utilities. Ultimately, it may emerge above ground as an urban flood hazard even before coastal floodwaters overtop the shoreline. And that it can occur in the Bay Area up to 3 miles inland from the edge of the shoreline. For the last 100 years, our Bay shoreline really was home to municipal dumps, military bases, industrial uses, and many of which left toxic contaminants in the soil. And also we have a 100-year history of ultimately racist land use policies, redlining that if you look around the Bay Area, most of our lowest income communities tend to be in the low-lying areas at the edge of the Bay. Richmond, West Oakland, Alviso, East Palo Alto, et cetera, et cetera. And in many places, rising groundwater has the potential to be a major public health hazard because many of these low-lying communities are also in those areas that have a tremendous amount of contaminants in the soil. And as the groundwater rises, it's going to push those contaminants upwards and into sometimes into basements, sometimes the surface, and sometimes just even into the air systems. So the first step to address this problem really is to do a good job of mapping the current location and depths of groundwater in the 9-county region around the Bay Area. And courtesy of the Bay Area Council and their grant program, we were able to tackle that with a first step of doing mapping in 4 of the Bay Area's 9 counties. Going clockwise, it was Alameda to the east. We bypassed Santa Clara because they were on the Valley Water was on the judging team, so they had to sort of conflict of interest. So we did Alameda, San Mateo, San Francisco, and Marin County. We measured the groundwater in those areas, and we ground truthed that with the State Water Resources Control Board and the county and city leaders ground truth the maps that we produced. The next steps that we need to do going forward are going to be to seek further funding to continue the mapping in the remaining 5 counties, and ultimately to produce this information. And we have a set of maps. I can give you the information how to get both the report that we produced. There's kind of 3 products. One was a report. The second is about a 4-minute, 5-minute story map. And the 5th is a set of GIS maps that you can look at that present what the groundwater levels are right now and what they would be projected to be in the future, depending on different levels of sea level rise. Future challenges I think we face in the Bay Area are, one, just incorporating this information into the future maps and planning for shoreline adaptation infrastructure. Right now, in the next few weeks, you're going to see some reports come out. They're going to estimate that the cost of meeting the basic shoreline infrastructure needs of the Bay Area is going to be in the $100 to $150 billion range. I repeat that, $100 to $150 billion to do the basic infrastructure needs in the San Francisco Bay Area to get us to 2050. That is a huge challenge. I think that's going to be a fiscal, political, economic earthquake. Secondly, just information sharing. I think it's important that we provide this information to the city planners and the county planners and the community groups that are going to be most affected by it. And lastly, we're going to have to do a really difficult, challenging task of looking and correlating the 5,000 sites that are already mapped in which there are contaminants in the soil, and try to prioritize which of those we're going to try to tackle and how we're going to tackle dealing with that in the future. And guess what? Many of those sites are in underserved communities. So we have a huge equity challenge ahead of us in the Bay Area with this issue.
Warner, thank you so much for the update on your project. In addition to these amazing projects that we've heard already today, there are a number of grantees from 2020 that were not able to join us today, but we have a short video to help tell their stories.
My name is Carrie Monahan. I'm the program director for the Sierra Fund, and we are partners with the Yuba Water Agency for this effort to address climate resiliency with forest health. This project takes place in the Yuba River watershed, which was disproportionately impacted by the gold rush, and as a result has highly erosive acres disturbed by hydraulic mining. The primary threat from climate change in this area is catastrophic fire and the sediment that erodes from hydraulic mines, which flows downstream and clogs up water supply infrastructure, where it must then be removed at great expense to continue to deliver water. With your support, we were able to advance an integrated approach to forest health, where the ecosystem services of restored hydraulic mines and meadows were quantified and can be included in future forest resilience bond models of investment. The primary outcome of this work was a benefit cost analysis for hydraulic mine remediation. This analysis indicates that for every dollar spent addressing the source of the problem at the hydraulic mine sites, $2.9 are saved in water supply maintenance costs downstream. With this benefit cost analysis complete, the Sierra Fund and our partners are now seeking implementation funds to restore hydraulic mines and meadows as part of forest health projects.
My name is Nancy Pfeffer, Executive Director of the Gateway Cities Council of Governments. Our COG is a joint powers agency of 27 city governments in Southeast Los Angeles County. We advocate for transportation infrastructure investments in our region of 2 million residents. We also work on related issues of air quality, climate, housing, and economic development. 3/4 of our residents live in census tracts designated as disadvantaged by the state of California. This reflects conditions including poverty, linguistic isolation, and environmental impacts from regional activities. With support from the California Resilience Challenge, the COG developed 4 urban tree canopy prioritization plans in 4 of our member cities, Linwood, Paramount, Vernon, and Montebello. These plans involved surveys, community input, and elected officials, and determined where tree canopy could be added in these cities. Our project partner, Tree People, has obtained funding and begun planting trees in some of these communities according to the residents' wishes. With our other partner, Loyola Marymount University, we continue to look for ways to create plans in more of our cities and keep greening our region.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Soltero, Program Manager for the Western Riverside Council of Governments. WRCOG represents the 18 member cities, the County of Riverside, and 2 water districts in the western portion of Riverside County. The Western Riverside County subregion is known for its warm, dry Mediterranean climate. Our region experiences cumulative climate change impacts when these dry and warm conditions are paired with higher elevations that are found in our region, high winds, which overall cause for wildfire threat, flooding, extreme heat days, and drought conditions. With support from the California Resilience Challenge, WRCOG developed an energy resilience plan, which is intended to guide decision-making related to the identification of and investment into critical facilities and other community assets in the subregion. The plan completes this in 2 ways. First, it helps with the identification and prioritization of the facilities by evaluating and assessing various factors such as socioeconomic status, the facility's operational needs, and environmental impacts for that area. And second, the plan provides feasibility studies, which evaluate the design and implementation options for energy resilience at these facilities. The next steps for the energy resilience plan include identifying additional grant funding to conduct additional energy resilience planning activities and to advance the existing feasibility studies that we completed to reach a construction-ready phase.
Jose Soto. I work for the Kings River Conservation District. Our project was done in Kings County. which is in the San Joaquin Valley. It was a collaboration between us and the South Fork Kings GSA. Our scope of work was helping to see the feasibility of an aquifer storage and recovery program called ASR. This was as a means to see the feasibility and as a tool to help with compliance with the SGMA, which is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And from what we were able to do with this, we were able to retrofit existing ag wells, which is something most farms are going to have, and demonstrate that it is feasible to do. And we anticipate that in the future, we would be able to implement this in other farms, as well as get out more information to those land growers about how they could do this and what benefits it would have to them. Thank you, California Resilience Challenge, for helping us. We anticipate that this is going to be a very meaningful and impactful project that we continue to work on.
Fantastic. Just so impressed with the quality and the amazing work that's being done by our grant recipients. I'm going to do a lightning round. Final question. Just check and make sure everybody's awake. So, obviously, we've all, those of us in the Bay Area and even in Southern California have seen record rain in recent months. Many of you in your projects have talked about water. Would be very interested to hear your perspective on how that's impacted the work that you do. And let's start with you, Werner.
Well, last week, my wife and I attended the World Water Week at the UN in New York, which was we're a little slow to respond here on the planet. This was the first UN conference on water in 47 years. The last time they did this was 1977, so we kind of need to pick up the pace. And this was a meeting mostly of kind of activists and organizations and local government folks. There were few national leaders there, and the purpose of this was just to get rolling on this. But I would say that overly simplistically that certainly for the Bay Area, I think water is at the core of almost every environmental issue that we're dealing with. And so I'll let other people talk about how and where, but I think everything from how we're dealing with our wetlands at the edge of the bay to provide a buffer to shoreline sea level rise, to how we're going to deal with the issue of rising groundwater, how we're going to deal with contaminants that an urban system produces that goes into the bay and the water system. I think we have multiple regional agencies. We have the Bay Conservation Development Commission, we have the Metropolitan Planning Commission, but I think the Regional Water Board is likely to play a far more significant role in regional adaptation. I think we have probably in the Bay Area, we probably have 10,000 engineers and we probably have 10,000 environmental scientists. However, I think the challenges we're going to face over the next decade, we're probably going to need more resources in the areas of governance and finance. How are we going to get 9 counties and 100 jurisdictions to collaborate on an issue that's a regional issue? And where in the hell are we going to find the $100 billion that it's going to take to make the investments? And how are we going to convince a combination of local, state, and federal officials to pony up that money? And so that's
very real challenges. Jackie, you have a quick, we're going to do a lightning round here.
Yeah, so when we look at our project, we just experienced flooding in Watsonville from these last storms. From December 31st to now, I've worked so many hours because I'm our flood control manager. So this project in particular, the more I can reduce internal drainage and localized flooding through stormwater mitigation efforts, green roofs, bioswales, the less pressure on the storm system into the river system and pressure on the levees. Water is a huge issue. It's my first love. So I'm sorry, Adrian. That's what I went to school for. I'm a hydrologist and groundwater geochemist. So when I look at those issues, the financing is true. Our communities are not going to be able to look to the federal and state government to help us all the time. So what can we do locally to make our communities harden our infrastructure, make them less vulnerable to climate change? My community is the one in the floodplain. I mean, we're in a 100-year floodplain. My wastewater treatment plant almost got completely wiped out by this last atmospheric river. So
I think it's really raising awareness of water, which is interesting, and stormwater in particular, which is even more interesting because most people don't think about it at all until it rains really hard and things are flooding, and or if it's a severe drought and water supplies are impacted. So it really raises awareness in an interesting way. For our program, I've heard from our state representatives. So we've had conversations, with Assembly or Senator Becker's office recently, and thinking about how to creatively fund school-based greening projects. So they're interested in that. And so that's a direct connection to our project. Other things, we're looking at breaking down silos within municipal government and working across water sectors. So we have a grant proposal out now to think about multi-benefit use of stormwater capture, thinking about how to identify areas of shared risk with respect to different water infrastructure types, including looking at rising groundwater, emerging groundwater issues, and how municipalities and communities can start working better together and really have a long-lasting impact.
So in our area, we have noticed a couple of things. First is at a community level. One of the things we've seen is up to 6 months ago, when we talk about protecting our levees, the question against flooding, and what you hear from people is never floods here. Okay, it hasn't flooded here in 50 years. I've lived here for 99 years. I've never seen any flood. So, and then Mother Nature came through and set the record straight. So, so there's a sense of anxiety now, almost to the point of agitation of what do we need to do to ensure that this will reduce the risk to our neighborhoods from this imminent threat, flooding. So that's first. So yes, plus on the awareness part, and not only the community, but also our policy leaders and the community of elected officials are now saying, is there anything that they can do to further ensure that the community is resilient? And we're tapping into that sentiment. So that's second. Then third, then is, this is also further borne out the idea of a new technology that's been deployed. In our area, one of the approaches we're taking to reduce the threat is by working with upstream partners. And then they deploy new technologies such as forecast informed reservoir, which means essentially it's technology that allows them to know when to release water so that it's not too much going with it and going to the ocean, but about creating enough room for inflow to be able to be held. But at the same time, doing so within the, making sure that it doesn't stress their dams, so they can withstand and in the event of earthquake and these kind of things. So it's kind of all around benefit because it's now causing all of us to repay attention to the importance of these water-related infrastructures. So that's the key takeaway.
I think in our work, it's looking at integrated forest and watershed restoration projects that are trying to achieve at the same time resilience between our aquatic goals and our creating reliable downstream supply by maintaining consistent forest cover is an objective that virtually all of our partners are working towards. A lot of time we're working on restoration of legacy infrastructure, poorly built logging roads, inadequate culverts. These things we're picking up during the project life cycle where we want to basically treat these landscapes when we're engaging in forest health treatments. And so and another major regional initiative that is closely related to this work is in the Sierras, there's been Sierra Meadows Partnership has deployed a massive I would say in some ways they've standardized approach to meadow restoration. Those are extremely high value natural resources. They store carbon, they store water, they make flood resilience. We're looking at a similar initiative in the Klamath, trying to replicate their success. And so I think like really integrating multiple natural resource values into each of our planning processes, and at least identifying, if the interests of adjacent funding mechanisms, because often these have to be funded through separate vehicles, even if we would really like to essentially use the same equipment and the same projects to complete the restoration goals.
Well, thank you. I am so impressed with the work that these grants and that all of you taking these dollars and putting them to use, hearing the impact that it's already having in the communities and moving forward the work that needs to be done to make us more resilient. Please join me in congratulating them on the fantastic work. Thank you all.
Thank you. And thank you, Danielle, for moderating that panel. And one thing Danielle didn't mention was that on the screen, we saw one of the presentations from Carrie Monahan was a project from Blue Forest and the Yuba Water Agency. Since that work, right around that time that work started going, where they're monetizing watershed projects so that they can go out and raise green bonds to pay for them and actually raise money to pay for them with avoided costs on their infrastructure. CSAA Insurance has invested $30 million into actually making those projects work. So thank you, Danielle and CSAA Insurance. Creating those synergies is what it's all about. I also want to thank, you saw a different arrangement of logos on there in the previous panel. So I got to thank the 2020 grant round funders. Every year we go out and fundraise for this initiative, and the profile of funders is always a little bit different every year. And so the 2020 grant program, I want to say thank you to PG&E again, and JP Morgan Chase, Southern California Edison, Valley Water, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Resources Legacy Fund, Alaska Airlines, SFPUC, and Pillsbury Law. Thank you. Now, for our final panel, the thing that really brought us all here, other than the food and the drinks in about 30 minutes, is to learn about the 2022 grantee winners. So these are the most recent winners of our most recent grant round. So please welcome up here, join me up at the front, Cece Ciarolo from the Greenbelt Alliance, Michael McGinnis from Bioregional Planning Associates representing the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, Vanessa Arameo from Alliance for a Better Community, Hoi Fei Mock from the City of San Leandro, Susan Stevenson from California Interfaith Power and Light, Kate Casale from the Student Conservation Association, and Lil Magaro from the Mycelium Youth Network, and our moderator, Sloan Viola from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research.
Thank you, Adrian, and hello, everyone. My name is Sloan Viola with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. I am housed in the Integrated Climate Adaptation or Resiliency Program, or ICARP, if you like acronyms. We have a great panel here today to hear about 7 amazing projects, so I'm hoping you don't hear from me too much so that we give them ample time to share their great work coming up. So we're going to dive right in with our first question of the panelists to please share your winning projects. Where is it located and what types of climate threats you are guarding against? And we will go in a particular order. So first we'll hear from Cece.
How about now? Hi, I'm Cece Sorello with Greenbelt Alliance. California is in a new era of extreme wildfire, as everybody knows, and these wildfires are disproportionately affecting and impacting our climate vulnerable communities. They're straining our local governments and economies, taxing our ecosystems, and contributing to climate change themselves. There's been a lot of progress on individual homeowner scale remedies like home hardening, but we need more holistic community level strategies to address wildfire risk, specifically severe wildfire. So Greenbelt Alliance has found that creating and protecting greenbelt buffers in high wildfire areas can play a significant role in reducing the risk to life and property at the community level and also provide benefits like outdoor recreation opportunities, habitat, and biodiversity. Examples of greenbelt buffers include bike pathways, walkways, open space, and parks, as well as agricultural and working lands. Our project is located in Sonoma County. We're working with Sonoma Ag and Open Space District. One of our colleagues is here. And this is building on, so we're working together to identify a priority greenbelt buffer based on mapping, GIS, and also community outreach. This is building upon work that Sonoma Ag and Open Space has already done. The Vital Lands Initiative identifies priority conservation lands. And we're also working with our partners, Pepperwood Preserve and Sonoma Water, who've been developing mapping tools to look at wildfire resilience planning and wildfire fuel reduction. So we're bringing in a lot of local expertise, fire expertise, ecological expertise, and also looking at social vulnerability data as we hone in on our greenbelt buffer. Our partners at Latino service providers are supporting the community outreach design. Wildfires, we know, disproportionately affect climate vulnerable communities. So it's crucial that they're at the table for all of these visioning processes and decisions. As you probably know, Sonoma County is wine country. So 9 out of 10 agricultural workers work the grape harvest, which coincides with wildfire season. It means less work, less profit for winemakers, and also more hazardous working conditions such as extreme heat and smoke. So Latino service providers brings trust and expertise in bringing in underrepresented stakeholders like farm workers and Sonoma's Latinx community to inform how a wildfire greenbelt can best serve surrounding communities. Once we've identified the priority greenbelt area, we'll be conducting property assessments and landowner outreach at the parcel level. So the final analysis will include conservation and stewardship strategies, policy changes, and funding recommendations so that Sonoma Ag and Open Space has all the information they need to implement this project. Tailored to local ecosystems and communities, this project demonstrates a powerful nature-based approach to wildfire resilience that can also be replicated in other fire-prone communities. Our methodology will document the process and factors that ultimately went into selecting the priority greenbelt and tools needed to implement the project. We hope this model in Sonoma County will serve other areas throughout California in protecting and stewarding greenbelt buffers for wildfire resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece. And next we'll hear from Michael McGinnis.
Testing, testing. Good afternoon. I had a question for everyone in the room. Imagine the depth and the integrity of a place-based knowledge that served cultural adaptation and resilience for about 13,000 years in California. That place-based knowledge served adaptation to severe drought, multi-generational drought, maybe 120 years of drought in the 11th century, famine, flooding, dramatic change in the ecology of diverse landscapes and seascapes of California, and very few local coastal plans or coastal adaptation plans today embrace that knowledge or embrace the traditional eco knowledge or sacred knowledge of indigenous peoples. And so my name is Mike McGinnis, and I'm here as a principal consultant to the Santa Ynez Band of the Chumash Indians. I've been working on co-management strategies and planning and policy development for the tribe and other tribes in California, and with a particular focus on coastal planning, but also more recently on coastal resilience, and also the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary designation process as it unfolds under the federal government. And the focus of this project, which I'm the project manager of, is really to embrace
the depth and the integrity of our coastal science with respect to climate adaptation and vulnerability assessment, but also the traditional knowledge of a region that was inhabited by the diverse Chumash tribes for roughly 13,000 years, and perhaps even more, well, if you think about the archaeological record, maybe 22,000 years if you include the islands off of Santa Barbara, the Northern Channel Islands. And our focus is to identify the cultural sites or archaeological sites around the tri-counties from San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura County that are under threat or vulnerable to sea level rise and beach loss and coastal erosion or bluff top erosion. And as you know, most cultural sites, archaeological sites, are either near a river or a wetland or along the coast or perhaps near shore along an island, and most probably are submerged because California, as you know, offshore, since the Holocene, we've had around 220 feet of sea level rise. So virtually a vast majority of our history, California's rich traditional history, is underwater, under seawater. And so what we'd like to do is, with traditional knowledge and scientific expertise in these three counties, convene workshops and in unconventional ways, share story, place-based stories, communicate, share, create a constituency across traditional peoples who inhabit those places today, scientific members of the scientific community, coastal planners, scientists, and think about sacred places and sacred animals. Think about habitats or plants that have incredible value, medicinal plants that may be threatened or vulnerable to sea level rise and beach loss. Come up with a case study or two for each county within those workshop discussions, and then think about how we might think about dealing with those vulnerabilities. And if you're a coastal planner in a local jurisdiction, you probably realize that not a lot of discussion or adaptation planning is taking place for those cultural sites or those archaeological sites. So we want to start the discussion, and we want to engage not just the scientific or professional planners who are concerned about this, but also start the process of creating a constituency across tribes to empower them to get engaged in future vulnerability assessment and coastal planning with respect to climate, and draw from their experience. They communicate differently. Their epistemologies are diverse. Their understanding of the world is diverse, and it is one that embraces the concept of the sacred. Everything is sacred along the coast. And so I'm very thankful to the organizers and the funders of this initiative to perhaps begin the discussion and the sharing of knowledge and a new partnership that can convene to, in a creative way, in an innovative way, think about adaptation for the long term. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And next up, we have Vanessa Aramayo.
Testing, there we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Vanessa Aramayo. I have the privilege of being the executive director at Alliance for a Better Community. We are a Latina advocacy organization that is based out of Los Angeles, and our work concentrates in the Los Angeles County region. We work to advance social, economic, racial equity, and justice for the Latina community in the region. And we were founded over 20 years ago, where we were uplifting issues where education and environment really intersected in the Los Angeles Unified School District, the nation's second largest district. We are historically known for engaging parents. We have a winning recipe of making sure that our work and our policy advocacy is data-driven and community-centered. And we focus in 3 issue areas, which is education, health, and economic prosperity. We also like to uplift the intersectionality of the 3 areas when we're talking about policy solutions and when we're talking about the challenges. And so in our history, because we have much experience in engaging Latino parents, we have seen that this issue of climate change and extreme heat has been an issue that has been at the forefront for parents. Our project will be focused in Los Angeles, specifically with parents and families that are impacted by extreme heat in LA Unified. We know that many schools in the Los Angeles area, especially low-income areas, have covered over 90% asphalt on campuses. Very, very little green space. We know that these schools need to be equipped with heat-friendly outdoor spaces and more shade. And we know that climate change is severely and disproportionately affecting communities of color, which means that this is also an equity issue. Of the schools that have been classified as high need and very high need under LA Unified's Greening Index, a majority of them are located in Southeast Los Angeles County, which is an area that is over 90% Latino, over 43% identify as first-generation immigrant, and over 80% identify with low income. Within this initiative, we are going to be looking at developing a parent-friendly curriculum where we will be engaging parents of students who are most impacted by extreme heat. Last year, we saw record-setting, record-breaking temperatures in the summer. And we know that students were not able to go outdoors during recess or during lunch for approximately 4 weeks. Can you imagine going back to school after the shutdown and then the heat being so hot that you're not able to go outside? And these are children who go back home and don't have green spaces, right? So the pandemic has been already, we know, exacerbating a number of different inequities. But when you add to it the challenge of how our schools are ill prepared to address extreme heat, it's only adding to the stresses and the lack of safety and security and friendly environments for our students. With this program, we will be giving parents a foundational understanding. Advocacy is extremely important and is a power building tool for ABC and how we engage parents to really understand the systems, be familiar with data, and be able to know how to uplift their voices, because it's through the data and the foundational building of information that we know we build their confidence to be able to speak up. The hope is that parents will use their voice to affect change and to also work with schools as partners. We know that parents are a key piece in being able to add to student success, whether we're talking to health, whether we're talking to increased academic student success, or whether we're just talking about the safety and the well-being of the community. So our hope is that through this program, parents will also be equipped to serve as partners and be able to have schools better prepared for how we're addressing the lack of green space, how we're addressing lack of shade, how we're addressing those moments and those days where students cannot go outside, and how we're really allowing healthy outlets and offering healthy outlets for students. This program will not only talk about the coming environmental impacts, but also how we can be voices in preparing for the improvement and offer ideas. LA Unified, if you know anything about bureaucracies, LA Unified's has got their fair share of bureaucracies. And so we know that schools alone cannot address these challenges, but through community partnerships and solid engagement of families and students, there is room for progress and improvement. Preparing our schools for coming changes will help to ensure that children no longer have disruptions to learning, and also providing increased more welcoming and safer environments. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. And next we'll hear from Hoi Fei Mok. Please tell us about your project.
Hi. So my name is Hoi Fei Mok. My pronouns are they and them. I am the sustainability manager with the city of San Leandro. We are based in the East Bay, and as you can see on the map here, have a long stretch of shoreline, which will be experiencing a lot of sea level rise and groundwater flooding. We're really glad to be able to build off of the previous work, as just mentioned in the last panel, from the San Francisco Estuary Institute and the Pathways Institute, which built this database that we're working with right now, which shows kind of those interactions between sea level rise and groundwater. So the main objective that we're looking at is to build out a sea level rise plan for San Leandro, which identifies where our main assets are, how they will be impacted by both sea level rise and groundwater, and what best strategies and practices should we look to make our city more resilient. San Leandro does have a number of priority communities that we are working with. We are majority people of color, primarily Latinx and Asian folks, many of them who live in the western parts of San Leandro, which will be impacted most by the sea level rise. And so when we are doing this plan development, there will be a lot of intentional effort worth looking at the different communities in those areas. And this will build off of the deep relationship building that happened in our climate action planning just a couple of years ago, working with not only those multilingual partners, school groups, but also our indigenous partners with the Segorite, the Makwa Ohlone folks, the Social Justice Academy at the high school. So really making sure that we are ground truthing the list of assets that were previously identified in the climate vulnerability assessment in the climate action to make sure that those culturally appropriate sites are listed, that those places where people are already going to and deem important are also the ones that we have here and are looking to. One of the other important things about this project is that we're really looking to our regional partnerships. San Leandro is part of the Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro Bay Estuary Adaptation Working Group. And as part of the plan, we will be really vetting these strategies and so on with our regional partners here, as well as with BayCan. And this is because sea level rise, as pointed out earlier, is not just going to affect our agency, but also the entire bay. And so we want to make sure that we're communicating the ways that we're going to be addressing sea level rise so that we're not conflicting with each other, and also sharing the best practices in both how we do the outreach and also the things that we're thinking about. So those types of cross-agenal partnerships, cross-community relationships, and also the internal relationships as well. And I want to shout out a couple of my colleagues who are here today, our city manager, our engineering manager, and also our economic development manager. We're also going to be working with our emergency management folks, as well as our recreation folks, really making sure that we're getting cross-section across the city, because many of the assets that we're looking at are going to be impacted in a lot of different ways. And so we want to make sure that everybody's different responsibilities are seen in this process.
Thank you, Hoi Fei. And next we'll hear about the project overseen by Susan Stevenson.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Susan Stevenson, Executive Director of California Interfaith Power and Light. I'm really happy to be here today. It's really cool to be on a boat. I am grateful for whoever gave me the tip to keep your eyes on the horizon. It really helps with the wooziness. So our project is called Providing Sanctuary, Respite, Refuge, and Regeneration through Community Climate Resilience. Our project addresses community climate resilience in the Watts Willowbrook area in Compton, Los Angeles County. Through the church and local partners, we aim to mitigate climate risk, provide respite and refuge in times of disaster, and witness the regenerative power of faith, hope, and love in a community at times of crisis. So 2 serious climate impacts that have already been referenced we're facing in California are wildfires, extreme wildfires, and very smoky air, bad air quality resulting from those, and also extreme heat, which is actually the most deadly climate impact. So the communities that we're dealing with in this project are already suffering from poor air quality, health risks associated with air pollution are exacerbated by poorly insulated homes and by lack of air filtration. We also are suffering from extreme heat with lack of air conditioning and rolling blackouts that make it impossible to utilize your air conditioning and air filter, even if you have them. In addition, this community is at risk from other environmental factors, including industrial fires, which have in the past forced people to evacuate from their homes, high rates of asthma, and generally being under-resourced in the community. This set of risk factors is all too common in many parts of urban areas in California. We're addressing it in one small part of Los Angeles County by creating a community resilience hub at the Watts Willowbrook Church of Christ, also known as the Brook. For several years, California Interfaith Power and Light has worked with congregations here in the Bay Area to create resiliency hubs, equipping houses of worship with solar panels and backup battery and air filtration. But this will be our first project in Southern California. Project will be led by our Southern California Director, Alice Druffel, who is here. Thank you, Alice. And also Jacqueline Badejo, who's here. Please wave. Thank you. Along with the church steering committee. First steps are to work with the Brook to conduct an energy and water audit to achieve energy efficiency improvements, solar panel and backup battery, and to upgrade the HVAC system so it can truly be a clean energy and clean air resiliency hub. We're still looking for the funding for some of that equipment. So if you have any ideas, let us know. We are also going to focus on getting solar panels on the church right away because of the net metering change that's going to take effect next month. Solar is going to be less affordable for everyone, but for nonprofits. Our congregations are nonprofits and really rely on that net metering income to reduce their energy bills and to finance the solar. So through those energy savings that we hope the congregation will be able to avail itself of by getting solar under contract soon, they'll be able to finance the battery. And with that backup battery and the solar power and the HVAC improvements and the air filtration, the church will be able to operate a resiliency hub even in wildfire smoke events, in extreme heat days, even when the grid is down. We'll also contract with disaster preparedness experts. We've worked with the Red Cross at some of our community resiliency hubs to provide trainings for church staff and volunteers on how to run a community resilience hub. This is a new thing for a lot of congregations. And also just we'll be doing a test run to make sure all systems are working before we actually open the resiliency hub. In East Oakland, just across the bay, we opened a resiliency hub at Faith Baptist Church. It's actually the first community climate resiliency hub in the city last fall. And while the pastor there, Pastor Curtis Robinson, is incredibly proud of the solar and loves to show off the battery, how he can flip it off and all the lights stay on in the church. What he says is the most important thing that this project brought was hope for an underserved community. Ultimately, the empowerment, the new investment, and the attention can really instill hope and pride and regenerate our frontline communities and our whole environment. So we're grateful for the support of the California Resilience Challenge for this project and look forward to reporting back to you in a year or so.
Thank you, Susan. And next we'll hear from Kate Cassell.
Thank you. I also want to give a shout out to the Bay Area Council staff who thought to offer these little, Susan, you might want to check these out. I don't know if I could be sitting up here otherwise, so I really appreciate that. Good afternoon. I hope everyone's still attentive and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Kate Casale. I'm the Bay Area's director for the Student Conservation Association. The Student Conservation Association's mission is to build the next generation of conservation leaders and inspire lifelong stewardship through hands-on service to the land. We do this by creating equitable access to nature, providing green jobs to youth, and advancing critical environmental work. We're a national organization and we work locally all across the country. For 65 years, we have been transforming lives and spaces, from our national parks to our community gardens. And here in the Bay Area for over 40 years, we fielded our urban green community programs. With the support of the Climate Resilience Challenge, we will be expanding our urban green programs this coming year to include the Bay Area Climate Resilience Corps. The Corps will be comprised of high school age students and young adults, and we'll be working primarily in the Greater East Bay in the cities of Hayward, Oakland, and Vallejo. The primary focus of our projects will be to address extreme heat and urban heat islands through projects that increase urban tree canopy primarily. And we plan to work with the city of Oakland and the city of Vallejo for these projects, and particularly with their emerging urban forestry plans. Secondary risks, including flooding, drought, and wildfires, will also be addressed through projects that include trail maintenance, habitat restoration, and fuels reduction. We really aim with these projects to not only address environmental resiliency, but social resiliency to the climate crisis, thinking about, how, for example, increased access to open space and improved open spaces offer communities refuge during extreme heat events, and decreased fuels decreased exposure to harmful air pollution during a wildfire event. Those secondary projects will likely take place in the city of Hayward, as well as unincorporated areas of Alameda County and along the Bay Area Ridge Trail in parts of northern Contra Costa County and Solano County. The projects will complete, the project with the Corps will complete approximately 8 to 12 projects, and we will hire and train and deploy up to 20 young high school students and adults to complete the projects. We will be using a youth participatory research approach, or YPAR as it's called, to really help select the projects, uplift youth voice, and engage community in the process. Really, the idea here is to center the leadership and the voice of young people in not only addressing the projects, but iterating on them throughout the Corps. They'll develop awareness campaigns about their projects, go out into the community and ask, how are these projects actually impacting your ability to be resilient to the climate crisis? In some cases, what looks good on an urban forestry plan is not actually what a community really needs or wants. And so really making sure that, that they have the leadership and opportunity to, take that feedback from their community. The YPAR process also includes collecting data and really making sure that we are meeting those resiliency needs, and that young people are developing these leadership skills for climate action careers in the future. The idea being that every job is a climate job. And, as a workforce development agency, we're really aiming to open those doors for young folks, especially those who've been excluded, from what's historically conservation, a very white space. And so opening this idea that, every job is a climate job and they're available to them. We also plan to weave in personal resiliency practices for the young folks. The more people learn about the climate crisis, the more already our mental wellness is at risk. And so we really want to make sure that as the young people move through the project, we're providing them with that opportunity to understand what they have at their fingertips to support their own resiliency, and share that with our community. Let's see, I'd really like to thank the staff from the SCA that's here today, Arnold Palomo, our program manager, and Ali Ratliff, manager of corporate relations, and Jay Watson, our senior director of partnership. Really with their expertise and passion, we're going to be able to execute on these projects, and a lot of our crew leaders who were unable to be here today. I'm incredibly grateful to them. And I just wanted to share a quote from Rainer Maria Rilke, which says, if we surrender to Earth's intelligence, we could rise up rooted like trees. And I just really like this quote because to me, it drives home my personal, really deep-rooted belief that If we trust in nature and we reconnect our human and natural communities, we can foster resilience in these times. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And last but not least, we will hear from Lil Milagro.
Kualitonali Lil Milagro Enriquez, Nawi no Toka. Hello, greetings everyone. I'm Lil Milagro Enriquez, and I'm a detribalized person of Nahuatl Pipil descent from Cusatlan, which is now known as El Salvador. And I'm the founder and executive director of Mycelium Youth Network that works to prepare young people for climate change. We're a predominantly BIPOC organization, predominantly queer, located in East Oakland, although the project I'll be talking about today is located here in San Francisco, both of which are on unceded Ohlone territory. And before I really jump into the project itself that we were chosen for the California Resilience Challenge, I really want to just take a moment and really focus in on a resilience perspective, because oftentimes when we talk about communities, particularly Black and Brown communities, there's a lot of language around like them being underserved or historically disenfranchised, which is accurate, and yet like that's never a place where we start with our young people. We always start from a place of empowerment and the recognition that they are the descendants of 500 years of resistance and resilience to settler colonialism and capitalism. And that pre-colonization, their communities were living in resilient, sustainable relationship to the land. And so when they think about this moment in time that we're in, this like earth-changing moment in time that they're in, they and their ancestors, this is not the first world-changing, world-ending event that so many of our Black and Brown communities have gone through. And that they are part of a long line of stewards, land protectors, water protectors, culture makers that are resisting now this moment. And we have them really ground themselves in that as we look to what are our current challenges that we're facing in our current climate crisis. And so some of the things that we're going to be working on through the California Resilience Challenge, and we're incredibly grateful to have this opportunity to do this deep planning work with our young people, is we'll be working actually very close to here, Mission High School. And the students at Mission High School are predominantly Latinx. About 55% of them live at or below the poverty line. And they also bring rich, rich histories of their grandmothers and grandfathers telling stories of living in regenerative relationship to the land. And they know what it means to do a lot with very, very little. And not only do a lot with very little, but do it really, really well. Like they look good doing it. And so for the California Resilience Challenge, one of the things that we're really going to focus on is our Youth Leadership Council. And our Youth Leadership Council says, how can we give institutional and infrastructural power to young people to transform their lives and their communities? Not just how do we bring them up for like inspirational moments and then rapidly move them on stage, but actually give young people the power to transform their schools and communities into a resilience hub. And so through our Youth Participatory Action Research Project, young people will be designing a community needs assessment. And this is a paid opportunity for young people, which became really important for us so that they can start imagining what green jobs can look like in their community. So they're gonna do deep dives into eco-mapping their neighborhoods. They're going to learn how to read climate adaptation tools like the NOAA data and Eco-Adapt Rising to Tides. They'll also go out and survey their peers in classroom talks. They'll do community pop-ups here in Dolores Park. They'll also do neighborhood walks to see what the community thinks. And then from there, they'll look at the research that they've compiled themselves through their own eco mapping. They'll look at what their peers are saying is important and what the community is saying is important. And then they'll be matched to climate allies who are going to go to the schools themselves so that young people are on familiar ground, which is their school site. And so that adults that are coming in, we call them adult allies or climate allies, will be moving from a perspective of youth leadership and voice. And that can be anyone from a climate scientist to a civil engineer. Currently, they're working with a mushroom expert, finishing up their current YLC project at Mission High School. So it could really be anyone and anything that young people imagine, because the solutions that young people create to the climate crisis will always be more creative and innovative than anything any adults can do, for good reason. And so after that, they'll actually start putting together a community action plan. And they'll present it back to their peers, they'll present it back to their community. They'll say, here's what we've decided really Mission High needs to look like as a community. And that'll be our first year of the project. And then they'll be working with a climate ally to say, okay, so now how do we implement this directly in your school site? Which was really important for us because we oftentimes see the ways young people are told like, well, we're just gonna wait for legislative change. It's gonna happen in 5, 20, 30 years. And it's really easy to feel disinvested from that system. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to work that so that young people are seeing in real time the solutions that they want to create come to life around them and seeing the ways that that directly impacts their peers and their larger community so they can see themselves as the change makers and visionaries that they are. And so then year 2 will actually be the direct implementation of the plan. And so we'll work with San Francisco Unified, we'll work with different community allies and state agencies to do whatever we need to do to be able to create solutions. And the solutions that we'll create will be across the issues of electricity, air, water, and soil, which are all different aspects that are affecting directly Mission High, but affect like so much of our Northern California landscape. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lil Milagro. That was very powerful. And recognizing that we're standing between you all and this fabulous reception, I think we'll just close it out with a lightning round of questions, which is posing to the panelists a question of, what about your work makes you optimistic? Working in climate change can be challenging sometimes because we are facing down the potential to lose so much. And this work that you're doing will have the ability to be, see some real transformations within your communities. So what about your work gives you a source of hope and optimism? And we'll start with Vanessa and we'll go down the line and end with Kate.
Thank you. Every crisis presents an opportunity, right? So we can seize the moment. I think there's never been a time that I remember, at least, where so much attention has been given to climate change because so many people are now finally seeing impacts. It's very hard to deny the facts, especially when you're living in them. I think youth and immigrant parents who have been authentically engaged in the environmental movement gives me great hope because they want to be engaged. There's a role for them to play, and there are more resources, supports, and networks to be able to do that. I know this is not lightning round, so I'll keep it short, but that is exactly what gives me hope, and just knowing that there's so much cohesion in the movement and there's so much of a desire to collaborate. Thank you.
I'll take a 7 generations approach to this question. I think the thing that gives me hope is my ancestors. It's our collective ancestors. It's people that have come before us when the world looked like it was ending in different ways across race, gender, class, sexuality lines, and dug in deep and did the hard work every single day without knowing if it was going to end up in a positive place or not. I also feel really hopeful with the work that is currently being done right now by climate experts, by climate scientists, by students, by community members, and seeing the ways that, again, like people are really pushing deeper and really coming together in a really beautiful and meaningful way. And it also gives me hope, obviously, the young people themselves. And when I say young people themselves, I say it from a place of like seeing what happens when we give them, again, institutional and infrastructural power. I think there's oftentimes a sense with young people of like toxic positivity, right? Like, so it's like you're asking young people to do a lot of the work of giving adults hope when hope is an action word and it's every single day. And the way that so many young people get up and they go to school and they're also still on the streets, every single movement in recent history that has been successful social movement has been started by young people pushing back against adults that just like us sitting in this room and saying, no, we refuse to allow this to happen, and seeing the ways they continue to push back in really thoughtful and creative ways also gives me hope.
I think being from San Leandro and being really, really rooted in that community gives me the motivation and the hope to keep going. I see this project as something that's really building off of the relationships that I came with, and also the relationships that I've seen grow in the climate action plan work that I've done, both planning and implementation. And just seeing the capacity grow in the last couple of years, and the interest and the leadership from the community has been giving me a lot of hope in knowing that I'm not alone in doing the work. It's often really isolating sometimes. And just knowing that there are other young people, community groups, different agencies that we're all collaborating together, bringing in our expertise and knowledge together as a collective, moving towards a shared vision is what gives me hope and work towards. Thank you.
I'm really excited to be working on wildfire resilience in Sonoma in this moment because there's so much momentum and there's so much collaboration, which is really exciting. And also seeing communities rise and use this opportunity as a catalyst, not only to respond in the immediate term as first responders, but address a lot of those underlying structural inequalities and demand, the culturally relevant resources and the conditions that they need to thrive. So I think there's so much work to be done there.
Thank you for that question. Good topic to end on. What gives me hope, I think, is just the number of faith communities, congregations of all types that are coming to us, wanting to be involved, wanting to serve their communities, wanting to be resiliency hubs, wanting to put solar on their rooftop, wanting to be that source of hope and sanctuary for their community. And then specifically, I was telling Meredith earlier, her colleagues that we worked with her colleagues at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab to do a study on solar uptake in congregations around the country. And we found there are thousands of solarized congregations and that houses of worship are going solar at 3 times the rate of other non-residential buildings. So that was encouraging.
I find hope in the more than human community. The fact that they're the highest concentration of blue whales in the world exists off California. The presence of a kokanee, spawning near Odell Lake in Oregon, or a king salmon, or a butterfly in a pretty rare pollinator in a coastal dune. Those things kind of rekindle the childhood memory of living in California. And I find hope in our memory. I think memory precedes our knowledge. It can create pain and it can create suffering, but the memory of our childhood, which a lot of us are talking about, I think, moves us forward and to organize and to resist and to communicate and share our knowledge. So in my memory, I find a lot of hope. I think in our shared memory, I find even greater hope.
Everyone for all your responses. I don't really know what else I can add. I was going to talk about, my hope of our young people, their mindset, the education that they're approaching the world with is just incredible. I get to be around them every day, and the sheer amount of passion and information and that they bring is truly inspiring. And I think something that really also brings me hope is that the way that we're looking at these issues now is really from an intersectional lens, and that gives me, seeing these issues as not just an environmental issue, but how it affects all of our lives and all of our systems in many different ways. So the fact that we're to this fabulous group of people up here and the previous grantees and just the number of ways that we're approaching it gives me a lot of hope. And I think, thank you.
Applause for the
Salon.
panelists. Thank you all so much. So excited to see the outcomes of your work. Thank you to the Bay Area Council for hosting this event and putting this on. Thank you to the sponsors, and I will hand it back to Adrian.
Thank you, Sloan, and thank you all. One more round of applause for the grantees. Now that is the program for tonight. So stop where you're moving. Important information coming up. If you're one of the grantees who are just on this panel, how about we meet on the back deck to take a photo with our photographer and with the funders. So some of our, if we can go in the back, and then everybody else, there's food, there's a bar, you know what to do. And feel free to meander around here. You can also, the weather looks really nice right now. It's gonna get cold later. It's supposed to get windy later, but right now it seems pretty nice. If you go out this door to the left, and then immediately to the left, there's a stairwell. Take that up. It'll take you to the rooftop garden that's on top of this boat. And it is pretty cool. And so I would recommend grabbing a drink, maybe a bite, and going up there and checking it out before it gets too cold. Thank you.